In 1967, I came to Papua New Guinea, dreaming about being a missionary ever since I was 5 years old, you know, growing up in this little farm community in Valparaiso, Indiana. And here I was, 700 and some languages on this island, an island just north of Australia. And my partner and I were trying to decide which of the 700 languages were we going to start in. Well, our administration wanted us to consider the Sepik River area. Well, there was very little mission work being done in this area. And they were asking us to consider the Sepik Iwam tribe, which was located about 500 miles up the Sepik River, and to consider working at a little village called Haunup, because the administration did not want 2 single girls more than 1 day's canoe ride from the nearest airstrip. Well, that kind of pinpoints it a little bit, because there were only a couple airstrips along the river, and one was called Ambunti. And so I remember the 2 of us getting into our little Cessna 206 airplane, and our pilot flew us across the jungles of Papua New Guinea, and we land on this little grass airstrip, Ambunti. From there, we had about 110 miles yet to go to reach this little village of Helena that was located about 4 miles off of the main river. I remember pulling into the village right here, and we cut our motor. We were just drifting there. Houses on both sides of the river, up on stilts, you know, thatch roof, bark floor, bark walls. You know, several canoes came out to meet us. And these canoes surrounded us, and these men were standing up in their canoes, and all they had were just vines around their waist and gourds, and they said something to us as we were sitting there in our canoe, and I don't know what they said, because the first time I'd ever heard the language. I imagine they said something like, "Dimam Nutko ko, Dimam Nutko, why are you here? What do you want? What are you doing?" I don't know what they said, but I responded to these men in the trade language, Pidgin English. And I looked up at those guys and I said, "Mitu pila like come, now Sindo wante Mupila." I said, "The 2 of us, we want to come and live with you." Well, when I stop and think about what I said to them, that wasn't a very good start. But I said, "Mitu pila like kissin talk place belong you pila." I said, "The 2 of us, we want to come and learn your language." Zero understanding. So we went ashore. We tried to find somebody that had been out of the village, you know, and maybe met somebody during Second World War or worked on a plantation. Well, they beat the drums. They got the entire village gathered together, 400 and some people. And there the 2 of us sat on a log, and one leader after the other got up and gave a talk. We had no idea. We had no idea what anybody was saying. We knew that we were the center of their attention. They would circle around us, and they were pinching our skin. They were feeling our hair, you know, and looking in our faces. We were weird. Later on, we were told this long village discussion that they had, that the first half hour of that long discussion, they were trying to figure out. They were trying to figure out if we were male or female. And I said, "Well, thanks a lot." Well, it only took them a half an hour to figure it out, and they decided that we were neither. We were its. We were UBA. We were like ghosts or spirits from their ancestors, and that's kind of how it started. But they looked at us, and we didn't look too threatening. Puny white skin, funny hair, funny eyes. So they decided to let us come in, you know, only 2 of us, 400 of them. And they gave us a little house right over here on this hill, this little thatch roof house. And it was up on stilts, covered with bark floor and bark walls. And I remember that first night in that house. Well, our training prepares us very, very well for this. And we're trained, you know, to live in the jungle. We're trained to deal with isolation and long distances. And we're also given an orientation about the area. And we were told that in this area, about the common snakes. Now, one of the most common snakes in this area is the python. Now, that's not a poisonous snake. The python is actually a friendly snake. It can give you a squeeze or a hug. But when they're young, they like to live up in the thatch roof of the houses. Now, the other snake, I don't even know the English equivalent. They refer to it as a mabuk. And it's a friendly snake. They call it a kissing snake. And all that snake wants to do is to get in bed with you or under your mosquito net. And during the night while you're sleeping, all that snake wants to do is suck the saliva out of your mouth. Now, can you imagine? Well, I'll tell you, when I put my woven mat down on the bark floor, hung up my mosquito net, and tucked that mosquito net in real tight, and then we blew out the lantern. Well, there's something about the jungle that comes alive at night. Actually, it's like God's symphony, but at night you have a lot of sounds. But that roof became very active. There were the rats, the snakes, there were bats in the house, there were hundreds of lizards. But there was something about those bark walls. They came alive. I mean, it sounded like rain. Later on, we discovered that all 4 walls were covered solid with cockroaches. And when I woke up the next morning, the whole bottom part of my mosquito net had been eaten away by the cockroaches. There was just hanging out there in the open for anything to come in, like the maboob, the kissing snake, lizards, whatever. And people will say to me, well, Marilyn, aren't you afraid, or weren't you afraid? I said, well, give me a break. Even the people in the village are afraid of snakes and some of those kind of things. But, you know, when I think about the 23 years that I have lived in this village, and most of those years were under a thatch roof house, I have learned that the safest place in the whole world to be is in the center of God's will. And for me, that was Hauna Village. And from there, an incredible story started to unravel, where God came down to meet these people right in their own culture and in their own language.